Good morning, good morning. Welcome to a new week. It's Louisa Munson from the Barefoot Broadcast, joined once again by the wonderful Dee Brodie. Isn't she lovely? We had such a great response to our last show, The Journey to Loving Kindness, Dee. We had like a load of people watched it in repeats, lots of comments, lots of engagement. People really, really enjoyed it. How have you been? And how do you feel to be back again? Because we're going to talk more about loving kindness, but maybe this time from the perspective of sorting or supporting our friends.
Okay. So it's lovely to be back. Thank you for asking me. It's great. It's always a bit nerve-wracking because, yeah, I definitely have got a thing about speaking up in public, but I'm determined to conquer it. So thank you for asking me. You know, it's been in my awareness that I'm coming on the show, and it's like, oh my God! But
oh really?
Here I am. No, it's good. I want to do it. I want to do it because it's something that I want to deal with. So, because I can stand up and read, I can stand up in front of people and read things that aren't mine, and that's no problem. But you know, coming from me myself, it's a different matter. Anyway. That's all about me.
That's fascinating because, you know, knowing you as I know you, you come across to me as somebody who is really articulate, is able to express themselves in pretty much any situation. You know, my experience of you is if I was to say, oh, I wonder what Dee thinks about this, and I ask you, you take a moment and then something really amazing comes out.
Wow.
It's yeah. That's why I invite
my experience. Oh God, it's not my experience of me, but then I'm up for changing that, you know, changing my experience of me, because that's so it always comes back to that, doesn't it? What stories are we telling ourselves about ourselves?
Yes. And before we get going, I just want to welcome Owen, who's watching us live from North Portugal. Hi, Owen. How you doing?
Hello, Owen.
And for anyone else that's watching that hasn't sort of said good morning, then we see you, we feel you, we know you're there. And please do stop by and say hello. It's always lovely to have a good chat. So last time we were talking about like the journey into loving kindness, and one of the things that really came up was how you said, and I've heard this before from you, but that it starts with us. It always starts with us, that we have to find that place of kindness to us. In the last month or so since we were on, it's occurred to me how much we are like, we can practice loving consciousness and loving kindness with ourselves. And yet there are other people around us that might need support, and like the sort of interplay that goes on. Now, I know you as a fellow coach and a friend, and also somebody who is really good at supporting people going through masses of change. So I wanted to dive into that, if I may.
Yes.
Where do we start when someone around us is struggling?
So, I mean, I've really got no particular answer to that. I think I want to start also with saying that because Christmas is coming up, and that brings a whole load of stuff, doesn't it, into the arena about being with people that we're not used to being with, you know, socializing with people we're not used to socializing with, and all that, you know, stuff. How do we look after ourselves in the midst of all of that? You know, how do we deal with all of that? You know, so I've got no particular answers, except Matt Kahn, the spiritual teacher Matt Kahn, his wonderful phrase of everything needs more love, not less. And I love that. Everything,
that's
everybody, and everything.
To start, isn't it? Let me just type that into the chat room, actually. And we've got Penny Albertella watching us as well from Devon, which is lovely. Hi, Penny.
Great.
How are you doing? Everyone or every situation?
I think it's everyone, everything, or everything, needs more love, not less. Yes. That's
Because
whatever
that's a really
situation you're dealing with, whatever.
This is where we get to find out how good my typing is. Oh.
Oh. Thingor, that's a new word. I like that. Thingor.
Yeah. Thingor. I wonder what a thingor is. So, I mean, you make a really good point there that, this is a time of year when, we are getting ready to spend time with people that we may not spend time with normally, who we might feel obliged to spend time with. And or we get reminded of any people that we're not able to reach that we might have wanted to reach.
Yes, yes, we do. It's a very.
I mean, where do we start? Like, in terms of preparing ourselves, because I guess you can't really help or support somebody else in one of these processes if you are not loving yourself and you're not feeling good. So, what first steps would you take?
Yes, because I'm going into a situation, as you know. I'm going off to America on Thursday, to Phoenix, Arizona, to see my daughter and her husband and extended family. There's a lot of extended family that we are not related to, my husband and I, but we are going to be mixing with a lot of people that we haven't met, and it's a whole. Yeah, and it's very different to our quiet little life in Portugal at the moment. So we're going to be catapulted into this other reality, which is, I've been thinking, how am I going to deal with that? And the first thing that comes to me, if I'm being kind to myself, is there will be times when I'll just need to say, I need some time out. I need to go away into my room, or I need to go for a walk, or I need to be on my own. I need time just to process everything, everybody that's going on. I know I'll need that, especially the older I get, the more I need that quiet time. So that's the first thing, is that that feels very kind to myself. It's to give myself time alone, just to enjoy that, because otherwise I'm going to get overwhelmed, I think, with the amount of people and the amount of stuff. And I'm looking forward to it. And there's a but, isn't there? And when you meet new people all the time and you hang out with them, it can be quite tiring. It can be quite tiring because, I'll be making an effort to be nice and whatever. And how do I survive that?
Because you're not used to being nice.
Sorry. Yeah, used to being a cow.
I love hearing that. Yeah, because I'm going to be making an effort to be nice. Yeah, Dee. So, I know, my only experience of you is as a nice person.
Oh, no,
I want to ask you were talking about, like, one of the first things you need to be really aware of is giving yourself time, and that you might feel overwhelmed. I sometimes find myself in that situation whereby I miss my own signals.
Yes, it's easy to miss signals, isn't it?
Like, how do we tune in to know our signals, and how do they often show up? I mean, I know you can only talk from your own experience, but I know as a coach, you're probably quite well, you're quite adept at helping people know themselves a bit better.
Yes, I mean, I don't think I have a definitive answer to that. I think if you're like you're a mum with young children, 3 young children, you're going to be looking to them, aren't you? It's like your children come first. It's like when you're a mum or a parent, that's a tricky one, because separating yourself out from that, I found that hard. I find it much easier to be aware of myself and my needs.
Oh, right.
Now I'm much more peaceful. It's like, what do you do? How do you deal with that?
Well, that's a really good question. And in you asking that, I realized that I don't notice my own signs. I tend to notice what's going on for my children. So I notice if they're getting louder suddenly, getting sort of uncomfortable, getting slightly argumentative, or suddenly getting shy. One of our kids gets really shy, believe it or not.
Can't really, no, but anyway.
and it's probably not the one you're thinking of, but I'm always almost micromanaging or micro watching what's going on for them. So I'm really not that not that conscious of my own feelings, other than a sense of discomfort because I can see they're uncomfortable. So actually, it must be quite an interesting scenario to be going to one of these events where you are only looking after yourself.
Yes, it's kind of new for me. It's there's all this territory of having that time and to reflect is a new thing, and it's a wonderful thing about being older is I do have that time, because I remember being in your bit where yes, I mean I lost myself for years and years and years, and I'm not saying that's what obviously you're doing it much more consciously than I was.
Sure.
But you bring yourself back,
I try to.
Yeah. And it's hard.
Well, I mean, if you're not looking out for your children, I realize now that maybe I've been over monitoring the emotions of the people around me, like hypersensitive maybe. And it occurs to me that I wouldn't say it's abusive. I don't want to go that far because I don't think my intentions have been to control or make things difficult for our family and friends. But I'm normally on the almost like a warning system, noticing all the different like changes in the force or picking up on things. So actually, truthfully, if I remove my kids from the equation, I'm picking up on everyone else's micro movements, which actually it's not my business to do that, is it? I'm guessing a lot of people that are watching right now are probably quite well versed at doing the same.
Yes.
Because we get a lot of empaths and people like that watching.
Yeah. And it's like, my question is then, okay, so why are we doing that? Why would we do that?
Mm.
And maybe it's because it's like, if we felt good about ourselves, if we really loved ourselves and felt solid and loved and wanted, then would we need to do that so much? I think I invented it as a strategy when I was pretty much when I was born, in order to try and be loved. It's like I tried to be responsible for everybody around me and try and make their life work.
Yes.
And that's exhausting, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And it also doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
Because
it doesn't work.
I guess when I first started to do that for myself, I guess it was because I used to feel like I used to have to walk on eggshells. I was always aware of stuff going on with my mum and dad. There's a lot of psychic energy going on there. So sometimes it'd be a big row and then it'd be kind of quiet, but not necessarily peaceful. So I was always aware of like little things going on, and bless them. They do work through things. And then there's these moments of peace and calm. But I was picking up on it all. And it's, I guess, I'm not a child of divorce or anything, but, you speak to people whose children who have gone through divorce, and they're often hyper aware of what's going on between their parents and somehow thinking that it might be them.
Yes.
and trying to interpret all the signals. So I guess, it's kind of hardwired into loads of us. But
I think so.
With the judgments I would have made at that age, they're probably way off bat, and they were applied to my parents. And now I'm probably noticing the same feelings or same unease or same sensations and applying them to other people.
Yeah. So can you give me an example
40
of that?
years later. 50 years later. Well, almost.
Give me an example.
I don't know if I can, but I've got a couple of messages coming, so let's just see if I can think of an example at the same time. We've got Mr. M sat in, like, eating an egg sandwich, sticking his finger at me because I said, this is me and Dee talking today, but I'm sure he's got an example, which maybe he can remind me of. No. Okay. Okay, this is definitely a girl's thing. Penny says, I was told it was my fault.
Yes, that's a hard one, isn't it?
That is really hard, because what do you do with that information when you're told that something's your fault? And I don't know, Penny, was that like as a child, as an adult? Holding on to that is a very, very difficult thing.
Yes, because you're going to automatically blip into that. Whenever anything is vaguely in that arena, you're going to blip into that awful feeling, aren't you, that it's my fault when I was 7.
That's really young. That's super young.
Yes.
I guess you're asking for examples. As a child growing up, one of the things that I heard about myself quite a few times was that I was aggressive. I didn't give things up. And the story of being a redhead, that redheads are fiery and uncontrollable and that they have tantrums and this, that, and the other. And so my experience was when something was wrong and I actually wanted people to notice, and maybe I did have a tantrum, but I would actually counter that and say most kids have tantrums, not just redhead kids. So I was aware that that was a label that was on me. And then for a lot of my life, I was consciously aware of that label being put on me, whether or not I was actually being extra difficult or whether I was just saying, hang on, something's wrong. And so I was aware, and I still have been, and I've carried it into my adult life, and it's been something that I've been working on. And I think I've kind of got the handle of it now, really. But when my parents are around, I'm always noticing that they've got this listening. They even refer to how fiery I was as a child or how fiery I am as a person. And if they hear people say, oh, she's so pleasant, she's so relaxed, she's so easygoing, they kind of look at each other as if to say, and I'm very sensitive to that. Or have been sensitive to that, because it doesn't really give you a chance to be outside of that story. It doesn't give you much freedom.
I mean, it can take a long time to get that freedom, can't it? To realize that, oh, I'm generating this somehow because it keeps showing up in my life. If something keeps showing up, you can be sure that you're generating it, whether it be partners who are the same, situations that are the same. You know, it's got to be, and that's the blessing, isn't it? Because if it's us that's generating it, then we have access to do something about it. If it's them, we haven't got power to change it. But if it's us, we can always change it.
Yeah. I mean, when I look back at childhood, the chances are I was getting angry. But I know my sister got angry too, but didn't have the same, just didn't have the same reputation in our household. Yeah. But I'm pretty sure my mum and dad would have had something going on as well, which was never, ever discussed. Not with me anyway. You know, it was always a bit like, you know, Penny saying I was told it was my fault when I was 7, and that these labels are really hard to get rid of. If anything went wrong, I felt that it was because of me, and that there was this story that, you know, things were disrupted by my presence, which makes me kind of powerful, really. But as a child, it's a bit like, okay, I'll just sit in my room all day then.
Yeah, I'll just go away. So how have you dealt with that? Because that's the same as Penny's saying, isn't it? In a way, you've got a similar thing going. So how have you dealt with that?
It's kind of interesting, actually, because both Penny and I, like Penny, as you can see on her comment, she's trained as a hypnotherapist, and she's a really good one. And she's really, really creative, and she's lived, you know, as far as I am aware, Penny has lived very much according to her own authority, to the best of her intention. So I think, you know, and with me, I just got away from the situation. You know, I had to, and Penny, please feel free to let us know how you did it, because I might have paraphrased that wrong. Pretty sure I did, actually. But for me, the moment I was 18, that was it. I was off. I didn't, and this actually kind of dovetails into the piece that you're talking about, Dee, that there are so many people that are separated from each other at Christmas, you know, and we come together and we might wonder, oh, I wonder why we always are separated. I wonder why we live so many, like, millions of miles away or thousands of miles away. But sometimes, you know, for me, it was much more comfortable to find my fortunes elsewhere. When I was outside of that story, I had to move away from the story. And for me, moving out of that story almost took me to live in France, to live in Italy, to later live all over the UK, but not in Kent. then a brief stop back, you know, when I was felt like I had no other choices, and it felt like, oh, back here. But sometimes you do have to go to the beginning of the story, don't you? And then to Bali, and now to Italy, Devon in between. I've moved around a lot, and so that's been one of the ways I've done it. I mean, presumably you've had something like this going on as well.
Yes, I think that's where a lot of us start, isn't it? The answer is to remove. Yeah, it's a great answer, is it? Physically remove yourself if you can from the situation, and then you start to get a bit of separation from it. And of course, there's the thing, isn't there? That wonderful saying of if you think you're enlightened, go and spend a week with your family.
Yes.
And Christmas is going to be whoa. That's why it's so hard, because when we walk back through that door, we often revert to being the 7-year-old, the 5-year-old with the behavior,
the troublemaker.
Don't we? Yes, the troublemaker, or whatever it is. I was a good girl. I reverted to being the good one. That's the role I took on in my family.
Wow.
I was a good girl, and that came at a huge cost of suppressing all my fieriness, all my what I wanted to do. I suppressed all that and became good, and that's quite a difficult role to take as well. And I've been unpicking that for a very long time now. And I know I show up in the world like I'm a good girl. I can't help it, because I trained myself. But
you do it perfectly as a good girl, with with a rebellious edge.
Yes,
you do strike me as a good girl. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's actually quite like you say, it's harder to express yourself, but it also makes life a bit easier to transact on the surface. I did create really early on kind of looking after people in a way of socially looking after people, and that's a really useful tool. I can bring that out of my bag, and I can be really great with people. No matter who you put in front of me, I can usually be great with them. And I know now consciously it's a tool, and I take it out of my toolkit, and I think, in this situation I've got to step up, and I've got to make it all work, and I can. And it's very useful. But I get now that it's exhausting. I go home and I'm like, oh God, bloody hell, I'm exhausted. But it's useful. And yes, it's funny you said rebellious, because at school I didn't break the rules very much, but I was never a prefect, never picked out to be anything except by my peers. My peers kept voting me this thing called form captain. So I was in charge. Yeah. I don't know what the hell it was. I had no idea, but I definitely had an edge, and the teachers definitely knew that I had an edge. So my rebellious edge does leak out, I think. Yeah. Yeah, funnily enough, like you, I was like voted in to do some of those things, but when push came to the shove, I never got those positions. They knew not to.
Yeah, they knew not to with me as well. So there was just, there was something about me that they could see that I probably couldn't even see myself. In fact, I don't think I could then. But there was something. So it is interesting, isn't it? We can't help but kind of show our true colours, really, to people.
So it's interesting because, like, with the title of this, how we support our loved ones, really what we've done so far is go into how we can be more ourselves, or why we might not be comfortable in social situations. Do you think it's because we can't really support people until we are being ourselves, or is that how it's come up?
Well, I think I'm realizing that the older I get, it's like, and now the journey is much more internal than it ever has been, because I'm at that age when I'm turning internal, and I realize that I'm better. I can, how do I put it? The more I deal with myself, and I turn loving kindness into myself, and become adept at that, then the better I am with people, because it's coming from if I'm giving out loving kindness to people from a place of, I'm doing this, but I don't really want to do it, and what about me?
Yeah,
it's not gonna, I'm much more coming from a place of, I'm looking after myself now. I've got this affirmation at the moment, actually, and it really inspires me. And it's, how does it go? It goes, makes me cry every time. I take tender, loving care of myself.
Wow.
And if I'm doing that to myself, and the inside me is feeling tended and cared for and loved, then I think, in my estimation, then I'm much more likely to be giving that out congruently in the world from that place, rather than from a place of self-neglect.
Yes.
It seems to me. What do you think?
Well, you raise a good point there, because it's funny, isn't it, how we tend to attract to ourselves what we need, but also what we're going through, and especially in coaching as well. So I've found I've got a lot of people pleasers that I work with.
Yeah.
Because I actually do think I'm a natural people pleaser anyway, actually, but I definitely cultivated more of it to an unhealthy level, to kind of prove to my parents that they were wrong about me. And
yeah.
And that's, and as you get conscious of that, you realize, okay, well, maybe it's time to let go of that. But I'm recognizing in a lot of people I know who are people pleasers, that they're always putting themselves last and putting everyone else first. And whilst they provide really, really good care, and I include myself in this, like, whilst you might provide really good care and security and help and suggestions when you're putting other people first, you're not really giving them you. You're not really giving them your all. And like, you speak to most people pleasers and they'll, if you speak to them unguarded without them like really analyzing, that they'll say, yeah, I put others first. But actually, if you're really putting others first, I think you would really give people the whole you. You would really be you. But my experience of putting other people first is thinking, okay, well, this person needs this. However, they don't like it when I'm like this, or they're really nervous around people that seem a little bit scattered. And I'm going to do this for this person over here, and they've got this problem, and therefore I need to adapt who I am to. And so you're continuously taking little chunks out of your personality, of the light or the way you might shine. You're continuously dulling your light to give a base level of care for people that they might not have even asked you for. That's the other funny thing, isn't it?
They probably haven't.
Yeah. So there are people who, and I found myself being one of them. And, I asked Carl and the kids actually, to let me know when I'm doing that, because I realize now how unhelpful it is.
Can I just say something?
Yeah, go on.
Because when you talk about it like that, it's like, aren't we amazing? Aren't human beings incredibly amazing? How you can, your antennae are up and you're adapting to all. And, if you're in a room full of people, you'll be doing exactly the same thing. Your energy will be trying to match all their energies.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, guys, try and make a blooming, a robot that does that. Good luck with that one. It's like, we're incredible, aren't we? The way that we can
really
do that.
are. Yeah.
It's an extraordinary thing.
Actually, when I think about it, and kind of put myself in the, like your example of going into a room with a load of strangers that I don't know, with my daughter and son-in-law, knowing full well that they're family, that they love, and also that they might have fallen out with at different times. And so you might have a bit of the backstory, also knowing you don't see them that often and want to have a great time. And then you've also got your husband with you, who's part of the family and also might also not feel part of the family. I would be like, oh, I don't know where I put my attention first. And so I actually, as I try and think into that, not that I should, it's none of my business, Dee, because it's your experience. When I put myself in that situation, immediately I don't feel very centered. I feel like there's all these little dots of outreach or hooks going out in loads and loads of different questions, in different directions, trying to almost glean a little bit of information so I know how to behave in every single scenario. I mean, that's exhausting. I didn't realize I might do that.
I mean, yes, because when you were talking about it, that was my second thought. I thought, God, it sounds knackering. And of course,
is that similar to what you might do or have done in the past? Yeah,
definitely. definitely. And that's going to be, I'll be observing myself in that situation. Well, probably not in the situation, I'll be caught up in it, but afterwards, when I'm lying on the bed and I'm thinking, oh God, I'll be thinking, oh, what happened there? And how can I love myself a bit more in this situation and be more myself? Because that's what we're talking about, really, isn't it?
Yes.
Louisa,
You know, there's a word that keeps coming up in the sessions that I'm involved in right now. A lot of people are asking about their true self rather than their unself or not self, their fake self, their whatever. Sorry, I've got a cat about to destroy our setup. He's
God. God.
And he's walking behind everything.
Which one is it?
Ollie. The black and white one, the big one that's quite clumsy. Oh, he's peeking over the top. You could push the monitor down at any moment. Anyway, what was the question?
Where were we?
Oh,
true self. True self.
People are asking a lot about true self at the moment. And I always notice the words that people are using, because they're either kind of seeded into the collective consciousness through media, or lots of people are awakening to the same thought at the same time, and I seem to sort of like catch on to it. But I wonder what it would be like. I'm guessing like the not self would be the self that I just described, you know, like that scattered feeling that you might have when you go into a room. But what would the true self feel like? So, you know, what I've been practicing with right now and very recently is like, who is my true self? How can I feel completely whole? Like I haven't fractured off a part of myself in a concern to somebody else. What would it feel like to have every part of myself here and available? Oh, I've just lost Dee. But okay, I'll share this with everyone else. I wonder what it'd be like to have that sense of fullness in myself so that I could be fully available to everyone in the exact circumstances that they might need actual help. And I wonder what that's like. And I can see we've got some comments coming in from Penny, and also Jenny and Slater's joining us as well. So Penny shared, to be honest, I still have work to do. Yeah, me too. I'm not saying anything that I'm not either. My parents and sisters moved away from me. I'm not sure I'd have had the courage to do so. And on rare occasions when me and my sister's family get together, a lot of trauma reemerges. I wonder how long it takes, Penny, for that to happen. Because, you know, like what Dee was saying, and Carl's got, what's your phrase about fish?
About fish?
Yeah.
Should be gone in 3 days. Is that okay?
Yeah. A bit like guests, you know, at Christmas, they should be gone in 3 days, a bit like fish in the fridge. The moment it starts to smell, you know, that's that's your clue that it's time for the guests to go. Like in our own family meetups, I always notice that, you know, around that sort of 2 to 3 day mark, that's when all the masks stop to drop, and, you know, the enforced niceness or the kindness that we might pay each other starts to wear a bit thin when we start to feel a bit triggered and stuff. So I wonder what that, you know, is like in your family. I realized that I created my own little family and did use that to create my own sense of safety. I imagine a lot of people actually do that. You know, so many people are in a rush to create their own home, to create their own family, to create their own sense of self. I can just see I've got a message from Dee. Hang on one second. So hopefully she'll just join us again in a second. Yeah, I mean, I can only really talk from my own experience, but I didn't create a family for years. I created a family in my 30s when I met Carl, but I was really, really keen to set up my own home. That was the real overall feeling I had was, you know, I'll set up my own home and then I can live life according to how it feels right for me, with my own rules. And I guess some of that was coming from the whole feeling of, you know, those phrases that you get in childhood, like, well, when you've got your own home, you can do things in your own way. And so I was like, game on. And at age 18, that was it. I was out the door, seeking my own adventure. and later setting up my own life, which felt really quite magnificent. Because I guess when you are giving yourself the freedom to live in the way that you want, you can really make those changes. One thing that has occurred to me, and I'd be really keen to know how it's worked for you, is I recreated my own life as I wanted it, so that it felt very much like, I could get up when I wanted. I could keep my house or I was living in a tent actually for 8 or 9 months. I had this beautiful tent with like a bedroom and a kitchen, and I had a job and whatnot, and it all felt really great. I was living in France. Wow, those times are really different. And yeah, I had this sense of freedom in myself because, I was living in the way that I wanted, had loads of fresh air and loads of warmth, and in a new country, which is really exciting. However, the moment I went back to the UK and back to the sort of narrative that I was used to, I started to feel those same controls come in place, that same feeling of unease or dis-ease. And it actually didn't really have anything to do with my parents. It was more about what I thought somebody my age was meant to be doing, how they were meant to be living. Was I supposed to be at university at that point? Most likely, according to according to what was popular at the time. And so it was that contrast, and sort of like walking back into that contrast, I would start to feel the same feelings of disease. So even though I'd actually set up my own life as I wanted, there was definitely that feeling that, whatever my new life was representing, it wasn't necessarily a cure for whatever it was that I felt odd with or at odds with. So Dee's trying to get back into the show. Let me just send her another link. Whoops. Okay. And I can see we've got some comments coming in. So let's just go there. I can see we're joined by Newbie Net, which must be really early in the morning for Newbie Net. So Penny had said, I recreated my own little family and created my own sense of safety. Jenny's saying, hello and beautiful morning to everyone. Just realized it's Monday. Isn't that nice when you don't actually know what day of the week it is? It's fantastic. Newbinette's saying, good morning. I seem like a people pleaser, but I'm not. I think that's confusing for people, but that's because some people aren't paying attention. I care about people and I come first. Newbinette, it sounds like you've got it like the right way. Must be quite frustrating being around people that do it the other way around. How is it when you know that you're going into a people pleasing mode, and how do you know when you're not putting yourself first is a question that I would ask. So we've got Dee back.
Sorry about
that.
Hey
Dee, that's okay.
God knows what happened. We've been beavering away in the background. Sorry.
That's okay. I was just reading some of the comments and talking.
Oh, yeah.
So Penny shared that she created her own little family, and from that got her own sense of safety. And I was commenting that, for me, in my own life, I realized that I was really quick to recreate my own life the way I wanted it and set it up. But the moment I went back to the usual narrative, so, I'd lived in France and Italy and moved around quite a bit. But the moment I went back to a narrative that felt similar to the one that I was growing up in, I felt like the yoke of expectation around me. And so whatever I'd felt free of, all of a sudden I was aware that I wasn't free of it. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
That?
So I just think that we need to keep going back to the original cause, don't we? We need to, physically removing ourselves and creating something different is great, but it's only going to work for so long, isn't it? Because the original core of whatever that is going to keep coming back until we deal with that. That's the thing. And that's the difficult bit. It's like turning inwards and facing whatever that is and loving it back, loving it back into wholeness, loving it back. Yeah.
Beautiful. And of course, that's what's going on every time we come around to like these Christmas holidays, or someone comes to stay, someone from the past you haven't seen for ages. Anything that you've not had to face.
Yes. It's going to be up
there.
Yes, it is. Because actually I've got something, me and my my things about reading. I've got something to read actually. Unless there's anything else that
No,
anyone else. Okay, so you talked about your true self, and that seems to be up for you in your sessions with people.
Yeah, that's coming up a lot.
And I think, well, see what you think. I'm going to read this thing because I've got this way of operating in the world, which I've told you about. Is I attempt, and it's a very poor attempt, but I'm hoping it's, I'm working at it, of being the change I want to see.
Yep.
So if I want loving kindness, it's like embodying that. And that's the congruency of working inside and giving it out, and all that stuff. So this is, I can't remember where I found this, but this was on the internet and probably on Facebook. And okay, so I'm just going to read it to you. So, and I want to hear what you think and what other people think.
I better listen then.
Yeah. So there is a massive change for the better happening on the planet at the moment. This change won't be on the news and it hasn't gone viral. And if you don't look for it, you won't even notice it's happening. The change is quietly happening in the hearts of humanity. People are realizing that we become what we focus our attention on, and that we influence this reality based on who we become. So people are realizing that fighting is senseless and focusing on chaos is futile. Rather, people are quietly focusing on creating their version of heaven on earth. They're healing themselves and focusing on creating more beauty. People have realized that awakening to their own true self is what protects them from manipulation and allows them to become the change they want to see. It's sweeping through the world, but it's hard to notice. However, its strength is growing in numbers. Not strength in numbers to fight, because fighting only breeds more fighting. It's strength in numbers to create such a beautiful world that it will be obvious for others to join. To the point, and this gets me, to the point where one day they will try and hold a war and no one will come. The frequencies of war, greed, and manipulation will no longer be able to exist in a reality full of sovereign, awakened beings living connected to their true self.
Wow. That's why it's coming up then, the true self, because there's this quiet revolution in place.
Yes, there's this revolution going on that nobody talks about. And when I tell that to people and I talk about it, everybody knows that's true. Everyone knows lots of people who are waking up or changing their ideas or becoming more, concerned about. It's just like, whoa, it's a huge. So what do you think?
Well, who wrote that? Or where did that come from?
I've got typical me. I've got no idea.
Is that handwritten? Have you written it out?
I wrote it out because I found it on the internet. And I thought, I love that. And I just wrote it down. But I didn't say who it was, where it came from. It's like, sorry.
Don't apologize. That's beautiful. I really, really love that, Dee. And it really feels true. Sue Kirk is joining us and saying, "Go, Dee." And I think she doesn't mean like get off screen. I think she means, "Whoa, let's hear it." Penny's saying, "A few years ago, I started to search for my soul purpose, which I guess is the same as true self." It feels true. And Penny, I'd love to know how you found it. Like, has it? Do you feel closer to it now? Sue's saying a soul love revolution. That's good. Yeah, my own thoughts. That feels very true. That was actually one of the reasons why I wanted to start the show, actually, because leading up to it, I'd felt really caught in the polarity of the big fight that piece mentions. That there were people who I mean, I'd personally got caught up in politics and the rights and wrongs, the bad and the good, and vax, anti-vax, like everything just seemed to get to me. And it wasn't, I didn't want to start this because I felt I had the solution, but I wanted to start this because I realized that we could all talk from different perspectives, and actually wanted just this space to feel that we could stand outside of that conversation, that we could just like be in this
Yeah.
space of everything can exist and it can be okay, so long as we're in communication. So that makes a lot of sense to me, because I
Yeah.
had to try to calm down the inner fight going on in me. There was a I don't know, maybe a whisper inside me saying, stay out of this, do something to the opposite of it. So I guess that's
Yeah.
what's brought me to inviting cool people like you to talk with me once a week or twice a month, or whatever. So that really makes sense to me, and really makes sense to me from the fact that people are all talking about true self at the moment. Speaking of true self, Sarah's joining us. She's saying, good morning, I'm late, just in time for Dee reading those amazing words. Sarah's somebody that's really come in and who I've heard her talking about true self versus not self, if I've got that right, Sarah. And I really understand it, because when we are people pleasing, or when we are working from an old pattern, we're not really in our true self, we're in our not self, we're in this construction to make life work.
Yes. Because somebody gave me this wonderful picture of that. It's just a picture that I'm just going to add in there, if you don't mind. So
Yeah, go on.
They said it's like our true self. If you imagine that you've got a diamond in your heart, a beautiful shiny diamond, and that's our true self. And what we do is, every time that something happens to us, we stick a bit of mud on the diamond to try and protect ourselves. So, when we're young, we start very young. As soon as things don't go our way, we stick a bit of mud on the diamond to try and protect our heart and whatever. And so our true self ends up being completely covered in mud and kind of hidden. And I think people are realizing that, the journey is uncovering the true self. For me, it's an uncovering. We all are that. We can't help but be that. And our journey is to take away the mud. Some people take a pressure washer and do it all really quickly, and they have an enlightened moment and they're done. But for me, it's been like one little grain of mud and another little grain of mud, and it's taking a long, long time. But I really do think that's a lovely metaphor. That inspires me. I think that's our true self, who we all are.
Yeah, I really, really love that. Sarah's saying, yes, the not self, or the anti-you, so like the anti-you. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, that
is sharing with us. I left home at 24, only for a year, then I was back home. I didn't leave home again until I was 39. Myself and my family worked most things out while living with each other and progressing with each other, siblings and parents. Newbie, I really love that idea, and that's how we're hoping to work things out with our children. Realize that, when we were growing up, and I know we're of the same generation, aren't we? But it's almost like our parents, and you're the same generation as my mum and dad, aren't you, Dee? But
yes.
My mum and dad, when there was this idea that, when they would retire, they might have some freedom. And so there was almost this idea that, when you're old enough, you leave home and you go and do your own thing. And it's funny, we've both gone off and done our own thing. And I've noticed that families seem to just be in this space of, we take care of each other while we live at home, and then that's our job done. And then it's our life again. Whereas in Portugal, what we notice is the job is never done, and they live really quite multi-generational lives, and they get the chance to work it out. I think if you've got this idea in your head that, the main part of the hard work ends at 18, and then you kind of rub your hands and go, off you go then. That must put a different kind of frame on your relationship, because anything that's still unworked off, you can just think, oh, well, they're going to go and do their own thing. I'm going to do my thing. I really, I do hear that people in Portugal, sometimes they find that their families are too controlling and they get involved. But I don't know. I'm slightly, curious about what it might be like to raise children as if they're always going to be in your life, and what difference that might make. What are your thoughts there?
That's what you're doing. I get that. That's what you're.
That's what we're trying.
You're doing.
We'll see what happens.
Yes, see what happens in 10 years' time. See where they all are and what's going on.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think it's awesome. And I think it's like when we're coaching people, everybody has got their own way. Nobody has the same way of doing anything, So it works in all kinds of levels and all kinds of scenarios and all kinds of ways. And there's a cultural thing, like you said, about Portugal and families staying together and living together and whatever. There's a definite cultural thing going on as well. And I love that is it Nubliette? I didn't see anyway. I love the way that she said that, because of course it's possible to do it that way. We've chosen to do it another way in our culture that doesn't support that in the same way, does it? The English culture, it doesn't support that kind of family thing. It's kind of died out in a way, hasn't it? A lot of it anyway.
It appears to have done, yeah. It
appears to have done. And if I think about, golly, if I think of me living with my family, it's like, oh, shit, how on earth would that have worked?
Which way do you think, like living with your parents or living with your children?
I was thinking of living with my parents, being in the same house as my parents and my siblings for the whole of my adult life. Wow, that would really have taken something. We all left as soon as we could, it's like.
Yeah.
My brother went to boarding school when he was 8. He was sent away, and, that was a terrible moment, but he always said that it was freedom.
Interesting.
It's different. It's different, isn't it?
I mean, Carl and I have had this idea since we got together, really, that we'd love both our parents to come and live with us or amongst us, that we could create a support system whereby we could look after them into their old age. And nobody's wanted to do that apart from us. And we had this idea that we'd like to create a beautiful space for his older children, that everyone can come, and it's just not worked out that way. And maybe there's a reason for that. I don't know if if we're disagreeable, or maybe just our families have individuated so much that we're all going off in our own directions. I mean, let's face it. I mean, I left home and went completely to another country, and my sister moved away early on as well. And that's also good as well. I mean, it's I guess it's the way of the families now. But we're realizing we can't push on our families what we'd love for to happen. And we've got to just kind of let people be as well.
I think so. I think that's the message here, isn't it? It's like there are many, many ways to do it, and they're all valid, and they're all, the way you're doing it is the way you're meant to be doing it, basically. Yeah. And it can be all kinds of ways. There are all kinds of, nothing's good, bad, right, wrong. Well, good, bad, right, wrong is very subjective, isn't it? That's what I'm saying, really.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I like that. Sarah's saying, haha, the pressure washer hurts too, Dee, in response to getting the mud off you. You've saying people pleasing is a choice that pleases me. I've never done it as a sacrifice to myself.
That's
and I
great.
Want to say, oh my goodness, well done.
Amazing. Congratulations on that.
You. Well
that's
done.
Gorgeous.
And that's great, because I know that Nubliette is coming up to a significant astrological event, which is going to absolutely massively pay off, with that kind of attitude. It's
lovely.
Perfect. Sue Kirk is saying children need to see the real you, even in vulnerability, then they will be real. That's beautiful.
Yes, I like that.
Yeah, I do.
I always remember, this may sound morbid, but it isn't really. So Harry, my middle child, who died when he was 22, he had an illness for many, many years, 10 years. And the one thing I couldn't do with him, because I was in the role of, I've got to make him better, and I've got to be the adult who kind of holds it all together. But when I look back, the thing I couldn't do, and Harry was strong enough to do this, was to say to him, Harry, this is shit. And we're in this together. And, I will hold your hand throughout the whole of this process, and I will be by your side, and it's shit. I could never do that. I could never be that vulnerable with him. And it's the one thing that I've thought of that I wish no, that's not right, because it was all perfect. But looking back, if it had been more perfect, I would have been able to hold his hand and say that to him, and we could have really opened our hearts and shared that moment, it would have given something that I couldn't do then. I was too busy being his savior. I was too busy trying to save him. So yes, I love that about vulnerability. Children seeing our vulnerability. I think it's really important.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing that, Dee. Really, truly. It's an interesting thing that Sue's brought up there. You know, I'm guessing we maybe didn't see our parents in the same light of vulnerability that we might ourselves seek to have our children. Because presumably now with your children, your grown-up children, you're happier for them to see more of your true self, your real self.
Yes, I mean, you're right, because my parents never talked about anything emotional, never. They were stiff upper lip, and vulnerability was not an option in our family. And I took that on. I've taken that on. So to be vulnerable is still a journey for me. And it's beautiful, because I think only when we are vulnerable do we truly open our heart.
Yeah.
And then that's the true self, isn't it? And true connection. It's a beautiful thing when we can do that. It's a courageous thing.
Wow. Yeah. So I think this is really what Sue shared, what you shared, and what's being shared in the chat room here is really almost giving us the answer as to how we can support our loved ones during difficult times. And that is just to absolutely be ourselves.
Gorgeous. It is. It's true self, isn't it? We've got the true self.
Shine.
Yeah. Yes.
And that's, I guess that's how you know when you're being your true self, because you're actually being vulnerable and you're okay with being vulnerable.
Isn't that beautiful? And that's what it takes to do this. It's to reverse what's gone on the planet, is us connecting with that inner diamond and the vulnerability of that, of opening our chest, of like taking the mud away and being open.
Yes.
And that's what, to the point where one day they will try and hold a war and no one will come. No one will come. Sorry, I've got all emotional now, because we won't need to do that anymore. We won't need to do that anymore. How beautiful is that?
That's really beautiful. Really beautiful. And given that we've spoken about families, and sort of like friendship, the sort of communities that we grow up in, with the theory of as above, so below, and outside and inside, the war is the sort of externalization of how we're all feeling.
Yes.
And of course, if we solve it there, then we've solved it in our families too, and vice versa.
Yes, absolutely.
So we solve it in ourselves, solve it within our families, or work towards it in our families, and that change ripples out. Is that how it works?
It does. Well, it's this is a thing I learned years ago. Somebody said there are 3 ways to be. So forgive me if I've said this before, because I'm always saying it. It's my mantra. There are 3 ways of dealing with the world. 1 is be the change you want to see.
Yeah.
2 is go out and do something. And 3, it's great, isn't it? And 3 is do a bit of both.
I love that even more.
So at the moment I'm choosing number 1, because I'm thankfully at the age where that feels appropriate to try and be the change, and a bit of doing, but mostly being. And you're at the age when you're much more in the doing, so you'll be doing probably number 3, which is the being and the doing.
I think you're in the 3 as well, actually.
Do you? Well, not nearly as much as I used to be. And then the youngsters coming up, the ones who are really going to change the planet, I've got great faith in them. They're the doers, they're going to be doing stuff. So I love that. There's 3 options, and all of them are valid, and all of them are just as good as the other option. There's no right or wrong. I love that.
This feels like a good moment to start wrapping up the show, and we've got some more comments to attend to. Really lovely sharing going on here, actually. So where did we get to? So Sue had said, children need to see the real you, even in vulnerability, then they will be real. And Sarah said, I love this, because she was talking about people pleasing is a choice. It's never done as a sacrifice to myself.
Beautiful.
And that's something I've learned from Sarah. Sarah has shared with me, and I might get the phrasing wrong, but she said something to the effect of, when you give to yourself, oh crikey, what is it, Sarah? Something like, when you give to yourself, like the world gives to you, or something like that.
Lovely.
You have to give to yourself as well. But so she was saying, I love this. There's enjoyment in people pleasing at times when it is pleasing all round. And then you've been, and I've starred this because I think I might like to come back to it. But I really appreciate the show because it's a form of discussing and sharing and not damning and quietly cancelling people. I know I've been quietly cancelled by some people I know. And I'm really sorry to hear that. I think most people here have probably experienced that. But B, I'm really, really pleased that you see this as a place where you can come and hang out, because that's really what I wanted, was that we could have this place to just really connect in, and for everyone to be okay, no matter where we're coming from or what we're up to. And you've been saying, yes, Sarah, everyone doing the best, whatever this is at the time. And that's what you've been saying as well, Dee, isn't it? And appreciating each other's efforts is the goal. No one's their best all the time, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And Sarah's saying, communication is not always verbal. Dan taught me that. And she's got a very stoic husband who really communicates his energy. He doesn't have to talk, does he? You can just feel it.
Yeah.
And she said, I said I wasn't going to cry this morning, but screw that. Lovely. And then finally from Sue, we've got, when one heart opens, all hearts open. We are all connected in vibration.
That's a lovely place to end, isn't it? Beautiful. Boom, boom.
Yeah, that really is. We got 2 more comments, sadly. So sorry, Sue, you haven't got the last word, but a true gift is a gift to them and to you, from Sarah. And Newbinet saying, we're human, so we don't get it right every moment of the day, but that's not what's important. It's the communication and constant negotiations that are stimulating and worth it. And then Owen's chucking in at the end, great show. No comments from me, just listening, smiling. Okay.
Oh. Thank you. Thank you,
Dee.
Thank you.
And Carl's just chucked in one at the end. Me too. Oh, dog. I think that's to Owen. Me too. I'm just listening and smiling.
Oh, I see. Great. Thank you, Louisa. Great. At a ball.
Well, yeah, thanks for coming. And please do come back again after your trip away. And let's sort of carry on this conversation of loving kindness, loving ourselves, going inwards, being the change. I love all those examples you gave today, Dee, especially that quiet revolution. It was wonderful.
Yes. Yes. Great. Okay. Lovely. Well, Merry Christmas.
Yeah.
Or what is it? What did they? Oh, Feliz Natal. Feliz Natal.
Yeah. And, yes, and I always just think of Feliz Navidad. Everywhere we go now in Portugal, there's that song, Feliz Navidad. Feliz Navidad. I love that song so much. Anyway, lots and lots of love, and we'll catch you real soon. Lots of love. Thanks for joining us. Bye for now.
Bye.